Welcome to Module 8 in PCC 289M. I'm Instructor Robert McMillen, and we are talking about Active Directory Certificate Services. This is a short but powerful module that gets you started using PKI and other types of certificates. So we're going to talk about the components of a PKI system that stands for Public Key Infrastructure, how to deploy Active Directory Certificate role, and configure a certificate or certification authority, and how to maintain and manage it. So you've got to go to install Active Directory Certificate Services as a server role in Windows Server 2016. And it provides the services for creating this public key infrastructure. And adding that adds a level of security for a variety of applications. I've used PKI for many different things: wireless, VPNs, EFS for encrypting file system, smart cards, and SSTP SSL as well. Public key infrastructure is a security system that binds a user's or device's identity to a cryptographic key. PKI provides the following services. You've got confidentiality, integrity, non-repudiation, and authentication. So all those things PKI can help you with. And you can install the public key infrastructure right on your Active Directory domain controller. You can also use a public server as well, where it's trusted on the outside externally. But when we do this kind of thing, we're going to be doing this through Active Directory. So let's take a look at the SSL client on the left and the SSL web server on the right. When we're using public key infrastructure, we see a request for a secure transaction. This is a similar thing that when you go shopping online, such as at Amazon. The web server sends back saying, hey, here's my certificate. The certificate is verified, and it sends the encrypted session key. Then the web server says, okay, here's the data. You can start shopping. Terms related to Active Directory certificate services: you've got a revocation list. It tells you whether or not the certificate has been revoked and you no longer trust it. You've got a certificate template you can create, distribution point, and all these other options that you see here. So this is a good thing to go to during your quiz, because if you get asked about certain things, this is where you're going to find them when it comes to these acronyms. Some Active Directory certificate service options you should be aware of before deploying this is you can create what's called a standalone CA or an enterprise CA. So standalone obviously is not going to be part of Active Directory. Online and offline CAs. So what you can do is create a root certification authority server, then create a subordinate, and then turn the root off. And then the subordinate does all the work. And then when you need to do some sort of an update, you turn the root back on again. Certification authority hierarchy and practice statements. So an enterprise CA is a server running Windows Server with this AD certificate services role installed. Standalone CA is a server running Windows Server, but with little Active Directory integration. A network with non-Windows devices needs at least one standalone CA. So here we have the standalone CA server, Active Directory not required. Can operate offline. Certificates requests must be approved manually. No certificate templates available. So there's a lot of limitations to the standalone CA server. However, in an enterprise Active Directory server, you've got a lot of additional things that you can have. Certificate requests approved manually or automatically, a big advantage. Certificate templates are available, so you can make certificates more quickly. They're published in Active Directory, and the identifying information is taken from Active Directory. So when you get your certificate, if you're prompted for your username and password, or it uses the one that you used to log in, it'll automatically integrate with Active Directory. So that's a big advantage. Online and offline CAs. If a CA is compromised, all certificates the CA has issued are also compromised and must be revoked immediately. Offline CAs are not connected to the network. So you've taken them offline, obviously, so they're not connected. All certificates and CRLs must be distributed with removable media. And root CA is the server most typically configured for offline operation. And offline CAs must be standalone CAs. So you can't have an enterprise Active Directory certificate authority that you can take offline. So it always has to look to that one. The root CA is the first CA installed in a network. So after that, you can put in subordinate ones. Two-level hierarchy involves the root CA issuing certificates to subordinate CAs called issuing CAs. Three-level hierarchy, so if you decide to go to a third level, involves the root CA issuing certificates to intermediate certificate authorities. So you have root and you have intermediates. Multi-level CA hierarchies are commonly used to distribute certificate issuing load in organizations with many locations. So I don't see intermediates very often in an Active Directory situation. I do see it a lot with large public certificate authorities such as Network Solutions. So they use intermediate CAs all the time. So we've got our root CA standalone offline, and there's your infrastructure there. You have the issuing enterprise CA, issuing, and then you have the standalone. Then you have the root CA standalone offline, and you have intermediate CA, and then you have the issuing enterprise, etc. So these are the difference between a 2-level and a 3-level hierarchy. So you can see it's a lot more management if you're going to add that third level. Certificate practice statements, CPS, a document describing how a CA issues their certificates. Not a required component, but should be developed. ACPS usually contains identification of the CA, security practices, types of certificates used, etc. So these are the types of things that you might find on, say, a CISSP or other security certification test that you would want to have this type of documentation. So you've got to install the role. Best practices dictate that the ADCS role shouldn't be installed on a domain controller. However, when we do it, we are going to do it on a domain controller because we don't have that many servers to pick from. Enterprise CAs must be installed on a member server running Windows Server Standard or Data Center Edition. And ADCS is installed by adding the role in Server Manager. During installation, you have the option to install several different roles. Certification Authority, which is the first one you're going to install. Then you've got the Policy Web Service, the Enrollment Web Service, et cetera, et cetera. So there's all different types of the CS roles that you can put on. So that's going to pretty much cover our Active Directory Certificate Services lecture for this particular module. We're not going to go too much deeper than this because the lab itself is going to be pretty complex, and you're going to learn a lot about certificates when you go ahead and take this. So that does it for Module 8. You're almost done. Module 9 is right around the corner, and then the term will be over, and you'll be ready to move on. And hopefully this will be the term you graduate. So we'll see you in Module 9.